Hi, I'm Brian LaRosa with LaRosa's Trains on Facebook. Welcome to my final video for the year of 2015. It's mid-December of this year, and it's about a week before Christmas Day, which is obviously fun for all people, especially model train enthusiasts like me. In this video, I will not only give you the announcements for the upcoming year of 2016, but also do something pretty unique today. I'm going to give you a tour of my train collection, and as I go along, I'm going to count the locomotives that I currently have in my fleet for two reasons. First of all, I recently watched an interesting video from Eric Siegel's Trains, and Eric did a tour of his train collection, and he counted all the locomotives that he has in his fleet. Now, generally, Eric runs mostly O-scale trains, but he also runs some of the tinplate trains, such as standard gauge and O-gauge tinplate, as well as some of the O-27 trains that his father used to collect when he was a kid. And so, for that reason, this video inspired me to do the same thing in this video. Now, the video is kind of lengthy. It's almost 2 hours long, but nevertheless, if you like to watch Eric Siegel's video, you can click on the link right below me. Second of all, believe it or not, it's actually been 5 years since I got into the O-gauge hobby, and so I want to do this activity to celebrate it. For this tour, I'm going to count not only the locomotives, but also some of the smaller motorized units, such as hand cars. So I'm going to count everything that has a motor inside, plus some of the non-powered units that I also collect. Now, I'm also going to classify them as to what type it is, whether it's steam or diesel, and the manufacturer that they're made by. Now, personally, I prefer Lionel and MTH. Now, some of you may be wondering whether I should count all the rolling stock, such as the freight cars and passenger cars. Well, for this video, the answer is no, because it not only takes too much time in this tour, since I have so many of them, but it's also quite unnecessary. There's nothing too fancy about rolling stock, because most of the cars in my fleet are pretty generic. However, I will show you some of the cars, but not all of them. Now, before I start the tour, I'm going to give you a little bit of history on how my O-gauge hobby all began. So let's get started. As you may or may not know, I always love to go to this one special event that takes place every November. It's called the Damascus Train Day, and I always shoot videos of them. So if you like to look at some videos of the Damascus Train Day, they're all available in my YouTube channel. Now, my fascination with O-gauge trains began in November of 2010. In this one train day of that year, I was so fascinated with all the trains, especially O-scale trains, that I wanted to have an O-gauge train for myself. Now, O-gauge is a very good choice for me, because I wanted a train that is not too big like the standard gauge and G-gauge trains, but not too small either, like the HO scale trains. And so I thought O-gauge would be a great thing to play with. And so, for Christmas of that same year, my family and I went on a trip to Rochester, New York, to visit my great aunt, who is my dad's aunt, and then we stayed at her house. Now on Christmas morning, I now received my first O gauge train ever. The first one is actually made by MTH, by the way, and then I'll get to that in a minute or two. But so that's how I got started with O gauge trains. Oh, by the way, I was 14 years old that year. And now here's my personal story about my great aunt. She's a really fun lady, and we used to go to her house mostly for Christmas every year up until 2010. After that, we no longer went to her house for Christmas. And now, unfortunately, in the summer of 2015, my great aunt died, and so my dad and I went back to Rochester for her funeral. But we didn't just go to her funeral. We did a lot of fun stuff in the summer too. And the best part of my trip was this one train yard that's located in Rochester. It's called the Goodman Street Yard, and that's where you'll see lots of CSX trains in action. Now, in fact, I've done a video of all this train action, so if you want to watch that, you can find it in my YouTube channel. So that's about all the history, and let's start the tour. And now, inside this cabinet is engine number 1. This is the Rail King 460 steam engine, Pennsylvania 460 steam engine, which comes from an MTH ready-to-run set. Now the set consists of this engine, a chrome tank car, a gondola with 2 crates, and a porthole caboose. And now this engine is my very first O gauge engine. And when I requested a train from Santa, I wanted an MTH Premier O scale train. But as time went by, I realized that Rail King would make more sense, because Rail King offers much less expensive trains and smaller trains than the realistic prototypical O scale trains. And besides, as of today, I care more for fun than realism. So anyway, this engine is my very first O gauge train. Oh, by the way, I also did a video of the MTH starter set. So if you want to watch that video, it's available in my YouTube channel. Now, in addition to the set that I received 5 years ago, Santa also gave me a couple other cars at the same time. A crane car and a crane tender. Both of them were made by MTH. Now on the top of the cabinet, these are some of the tinplate freight cars. On one drawer, and on the other drawer, they are also tinplate cars. And I use them to run with my tinplate steam engine on the layout. It's sitting on the layout right now, which I'll get to in just a few minutes. underneath 1/4 of my layout is this one shelf that's full of trains. On the top shelf are some freight cars, some Lionel, some MTH. And on the bottom shelf are a couple of CSX diesels, and both of them are MTH. Starting at the front, this is an MTH Premier CSX C30-7 diesel with an interesting story that I have. This locomotive was made in 1994 and was originally equipped with the MTH's Protosound 1 system. However, it was eventually upgraded with a newer Protosound 2 system along with the MTH's digital command system, so that it can run on command control layouts like mine. Now, a few days before I turned 16, I bought this engine from Train Depot in Mount Airy, Maryland. And when I ran this locomotive, I have heard from some of you that the sound system is not totally correct to this locomotive. And so, a few years later, when we bought the new MTH DCS system, I retrofitted this locomotive with a correct sound file so that it would sound more realistic. In fact, I did a review of this locomotive, so if you'd like to find that video, you can watch that, and it's available in my YouTube channel. And I also did a video on retrofitting my locomotive with the correct sound file. That video is also available in my YouTube channel. Behind the Dash 7 is another MTH Premier locomotive, and it's the model that I always wanted. This is a CSX AC4400CW diesel, which is actually a non-powered unit, and I intentionally bought that because I knew that the powered unit would be more expensive. Now, I bought that locomotive a year before I bought the Dash 7, and because it's a non-powered unit, it can be lashed up with another locomotive like this one. And I originally thought about lashing this locomotive up with that locomotive because the minimum curve needed to run the AC4400 is 042, and I actually have the 042 curves as the maximum curve on my layout. But I decided to decline that, and so I kept it on display because it's a little bit too big, even though it can handle curves as tight as 042. Now this locomotive seems to be my first diesel, but literally the Dash 7 would be my first powered diesel in action. Like most of my MTH locomotives, I did do a video on the AC4400 diesel, and you can find that in my YouTube channel. Now, let's talk a little bit about non-powered diesels. When it comes to Premier O-scale non-powered diesels, MTH used to offer them for many years because they are simply a more affordable way to create diesel lash-ups, and people wanted to buy some non-powered units to create diesel lash-ups, so they wouldn't have to spend a fortune on powered units to create lash-ups. But around 2012 or so, MTH realized that the non-powered units were not as profitable as the powered units, and so they discontinued them. However, when the Norfolk Southern Heritage diesels were introduced to the Premier line, MTH decided to make the non-powered versions of each Heritage diesel, because some people even want to purchase all 20 NS Heritage units, but instead of spending too much money on all the powered units, they can spend money on some non-powered units along with some powered units, and that way the non-powered Heritage units would simply be more affordable. They're much more affordable and so that way chances are people can collect all 20 Heritage units, some powered and some non-powered. Today, the only new Premier non-powered diesels I've ever seen are not only the non-powered B units for cab unit diesels like the F3s and F7s, but also some of the non-powered A units as well. And I couldn't believe it in the first place, but here's why. Up until this year, MTH used to offer cab unit diesels as ABA diesel sets, specifically consisting of 2 powered A units and 1 non-powered B unit in the middle. Because each A unit has 2 motors like all Premier diesels, the ABA sets have incredibly high pulling power. However, they were also very expensive. So expensive that some people requested MTH to split all A units and B units as separately sold individual items. And so starting this year, MTH did for yet the same purpose. All the separately sold A units and B units are simply becoming more affordable than the ABA sets, and that's a really good thing. So customers will not have to be forced to purchase the ABA diesel sets. Now, depending on the type of cab unit, there are several different items in each road name. For example, I have seen the latest rendition of the Norfolk Southern Executive F7 diesels, and I think this particular model has 7 different versions. There are 2 powered A units for high rail operation or 3-rail operation, 2 powered scale-wheeled A units for 2-rail operation, 2 non-powered B units, and 1 non-powered A unit. And so I'm guessing that the non-powered A unit is used for the same purpose, because some people want to have something like an ABBA consist, consisting of the 2 A units and then 2 B units, but they would want only 1 A unit, while the other only 1 A unit that is a powered unit, and the other one as a non-powered unit. So even the non-powered A units would still be profitable because they're simply more affordable. Underneath this spot on my layout is another shelf full of trains. And like the previous shelf I showed you earlier, this shelf also has 2 shelves, the top shelf and the bottom shelf. Starting at the top shelf, we come to this magnificent locomotive. This is the Polar Express 284 Berkshire locomotive, which comes from a set consisting of this locomotive and 3 Polar Express passenger cars. Now, I received this set in Christmas of 2012, 2 years after my very first O gauge train, which is an MTH 460 steam engine, and this one was given by my family, my mom, my dad, and my sister, and they thought it's a good set to me because a lot of other Lionel star sets were a bit too generic and quite boring, and so the Polar Express would be the best choice for them to give me. And now this locomotive is actually my first Lionel engine, and it's always good for me to have some classic Lionel trains. And I definitely did a video on this locomotive, and you can find that in my YouTube channel. Now, interestingly, according to my YouTube channel, my video of the Polar Express set is currently the most viewed video in my channel, and it said it has currently over 150,000 views, and my gosh, that's so extremely popular. And I also have a lot of comments on this video too. So it's a really fantastic set. Now, I also have an add-on car to this set, which is on the layout right now. This is a conductor announcement coach. Now, I moved it off the shelf so it's easier to see this locomotive. So it's a really fantastic set, and I'm really happy with it. And what we got here is this one thing that's considered to be my first Lionel motorized unit. This is a Lionel Hand Car, and it's a really cute little thing, and again, I do have a video of that too, and you can find it in my YouTube channel. The final engine on the top shelf is Lionel's O gauge Thomas the Tank engine. In fact, I used to play with my Thomas wooden railway trains when I was little. But because I'm into O gauge, I thought Thomas the Tank engine would be really useful for my fleet. In fact, I did do a video of the Lionel Thomas the Tank engine, and it's still available in my YouTube channel. Now we come to the bottom shelf, and what we see here is the Lionel post-war Santa Fe F3 diesel. There are 2 locomotives in this set. One is the powered unit, and the other one behind it is the non-powered unit. Now, just in case you're curious, I do not have a B unit in this set, but if there's ever a B unit in my collection, I would count this as a locomotive. Now, I chose that engine because it's a really fantastic locomotive, and it was one of Lionel's best-selling locomotives during the post-war era, and is still popular in the modern era too. And so I wanted to choose that because it's one of Lionel's most iconic locomotives in its history. Now, again, I did do a video on that locomotive, and you can find that in my YouTube channel. And what we have here is the Rail King Norfolk Southern Heritage SD70 ACE diesel from MTH as part of Norfolk Southern's 30th anniversary. Now, I am indeed a big fan of the Norfolk Southern Heritage diesels, and so I wanted to have at least a Heritage unit. And I chose that unit because I like the Norfolk Southern paint scheme. This nice red and yellow paint scheme. And I also wanted to have a couple of matching freight cars that MTH had also put out. And they're sitting on the layout. I moved them out of the way so it's easier to look at the SD70 diesel. Now, like most of my locomotives, I did do a video on that engine, and you can find that in my YouTube channel. Oh, by the way, this locomotive was my first Rail King diesel, because the two CSX engines I showed you a few minutes ago were actually from the MTH Premier line. But I wanted to stick with Rail King because I'm not into O-scale trains. And this locomotive is also my first MTH locomotive equipped with the newest sound system, the Protosound 3. I have a couple of locomotives that are equipped with Protosound 2. The one equipped with PS2 is the 460 steam engine that I showed you in the beginning, and the C30-7 is also equipped with Protosound 2. Other than that, this locomotive is my first PS3 engine. The last part of the tour is on my layout, and you can see a lot of motive power sitting there. Now, starting right there, this is the Kaline Kennecott Copper Corporation hand car, with an interesting story behind it. As many of you probably know, Kaline was one of the Oak Aged competitors, and the Kaline trains are pretty nice, but unfortunately Kaline went out of business around 2005 or so. And then Lionel acquired some of the tooling from Kaline, and they did the Kaline by Lionel products for a few years. Now because the Kaline went out of business, I wasn't quite into Kaline trains, but nevertheless, it's a really nice looking car. Next, we come to another great Lionel post-war diesel, the Jersey Central NW2 switcher. Now, my mom loves that railroad because when she was a kid, her dad, my grandpa, used to commute on the Jersey Central from their home in Westfield, New Jersey, to his job in Manhattan. And so she gave me a suggestion to have the Jersey Central locomotive, and it's a really nice switcher, and I'm really happy with it. Next, we come to another great locomotive from MTH. This is a Rail King Amtrak Genesis diesel, which was cataloged last year. And I really love the paint scheme in this locomotive because it was used to commemorate Amtrak's 40th anniversary. So it's a really nice engine, and I also wanted to have some of the matching passenger cars with this locomotive, and so I did. The passenger cars are over there. And yes, I did do a video on this locomotive, and you can find that in my YouTube channel. Right next to the Genesis is this incredible locomotive, also from MTH, and this one is probably one of my favorites in my fleet. It's the Rail King GE Evolution ES44AC Hybrid, which was cataloged a couple years ago, and it's so incredible. And in my opinion, the best feature in this locomotive are these wonderful chasing lights that simulate the charging of the batteries on a hybrid locomotive. And so Now I've actually ordered an additional ES44 to my fleet. It will be a Canadian National locomotive, and I will count that locomotive too. Yes, I will also do a video on that locomotive, but not quite a full review on it, because I've already done a full review on this locomotive. So if you'd like to see a full review on that, check out the video of the hybrid locomotive, and it's available in my YouTube channel. Next to the MTH hybrid is another incredible locomotive. This is the Penn Central GG1 electric locomotive from Lionel, which was made during the MPC era, to my knowledge. Now this locomotive is actually my first electric locomotive. It's a really famous locomotive, and I do like the way that this locomotive was designed by the famous industrial designer Raymond Loewy. And sometime in the future, I really want some other locomotives made by other famous industrial designers, such as Henry Dreyfuss, who designed the Dreyfuss-Hudson for the New York Central, and Otto Keeler, who designed the Hiawatha for the Milwaukee Road. And like most of my locomotives, I did do a video on the GG1, and you can find that in my YouTube channel. As you move across my layout, we now come to another one of my small motorized units. This is the Porky and Petunia Pig Hand Car, made by Lionel, and my mom likes it so much that she wanted to buy that for me, and it's a really cute little thing. Now we come to the last locomotive that's sitting on the layout, but this is not my very last locomotive that I'm going to count today, and I'll explain more about it in just a minute. This is the Lionel pre-war Tinplate 259E steam engine, and I actually received it for Christmas last year, and it's a really excellent locomotive because this is actually my first O-gauge Tinplate engine. And as I showed you earlier in the tour, I do have some of the Tinplate cars to run with it. And by the way, I also got the GG1 for Christmas last year. But this is a really fantastic locomotive, and what's even nicer is that it's also all original locomotive. I don't think this is a reproduction locomotive. However, I would really love to have some more Tinplate locomotives because they're so gorgeous. I'm probably gonna choose something like an O-gauge Blue Comet version, which is based on the famous train from the Jersey Central Railroad. So I thought it'd be really gorgeous if I have something like the Blue Comet. And I also did a video on that locomotive too, and you can find that in my YouTube channel. So a really awesome pre-war locomotive, and I'm hoping to have some more Tinplate trains in the future. Before I get to the final locomotive in my engine count, I want to point out that I have a couple of relatives who used to play with their trains when they were kids. First of all, my mom's brother, who is my uncle, actually had a Lionel post-war O-gauge train when he was a kid. And today he no longer plays with his train, and he's going to sell his entire post-war collection, including, of course, the locomotive. Now, he did email me some of the photos of his post-war collection, including the engine, and I forgot what the locomotive is going to be, but but this is going to be my final locomotive in my fleet. Although I don't currently have this right now. Now, as I said earlier, I have ordered an additional ES44 locomotive from MTH, and so I actually have 2 locomotives that I currently don't have in my layout, but I'm still counting them to my fleet. So that's what the final locomotive is going to be. My uncle's post-war O-gauge steam locomotive. Another relative who used to play with trains as a kid was my dad, but unlike my uncle, my dad was not into O-gauge trains. Instead, he got an American Flyer S-gauge train set. Now, if you don't know what S-gauge is basically smaller than O-gauge. Now you notice that that we still have my dad's old American Flyer set, and you can see the engine right there, and some of the cars right there, and the entire set definitely needs maintenance. And I don't think we currently have enough space to build an S-gauge layout. Well, but I'm hoping to have the S-gauge trains running sometime in the future. So it's a really cool set. It's really nice that my dad had at least a toy train. The last thing I'm going to do before I end this video is to give you some announcements for 2016. First of all, as many of you already know, MTH has developed the capability to run trains with a smartphone and tablet. Now, for those of you who haven't heard about it from my Facebook page, I actually got my Samsung Galaxy S6 smartphone known as the Android phone, and MTH has offered the app for both iPhone and Android phones and tablets, and so what MTH has released is a special Wi-Fi unit that basically translates phone signals into command signals through the DCS system, so that trains can respond to command signals from the smartphone or tablet. And so I'm hoping to have the Wi-Fi unit for Christmas of this year, and I will definitely do a video tutorial on how to run trains with smartphones like this one. Secondly, because we spend so much money on all my trains, I'm thinking about having a part-time job probably next summer, because I really like to spend some of my own money with the newer trains, because to be honest with you, my parents are the ones who paid all the money for my trains, and so that's why I'm hoping to have the first locomotive to be spent with my own money. And so what I'm going to do next summer is to have a part-time job, so that way I could spend some of my money with some of the good trains. And then finally, I've been thinking about creating a a website to show all of my trains, and that way, if you want to look at all of my rolling stock, which I have not shown in the tour, I will make a database that shows all my locomotives, motorized units, freight cars, and passenger cars. But currently, I don't have the experience of creating websites. And if anyone has a suggestion about it, please let me know. And I'm hoping I'll make a good website to show you all my trains. So anyway, that's about all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the tour. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'm Brian LaRosa, and I'll see you next time.